So, Stephanie, we've talked a lot about the approach on how to get a job. Let's maybe talk about the actual different jobs that you were in. So, we've talked on this series about some people, they've had the same job their whole career, but that's not typical. Most people will have a series of jobs throughout their life, and they may be very similar or they may be very different. So, for you, I'd maybe like to start with the first job that you had out of college and a little bit about what it was called and what it was like.
Okay, sure. My first job was marketing specialist, and I was at Pacific Care in the senior services department.
Okay.
So that was pretty incredible that I found a company that had a department called that, because that really, it's still, again, to this day, doesn't really exist. So my role was to help, we had this health insurance designed for the older customer. And so my role was to help the salespeople better understand older adults. And so it was a really ideal first job. I wrote and edited a newsletter that went out to all the salespeople.
Okay.
And just with the latest trends in aging and marketing to older customers and things to keep in mind for communicating with older people, all kinds of things, and really trying to we have the term sensitize, sensitize them to, it's somewhat an outdated term, but that, older people, you have to be sensitive to their differences and things like that.
Wow, that sounds so exciting. You actually did find a job that was business marketing specialist and, senior related, senior services department. So that's great. So would you recommend kind of that large company experience?
Yeah, I would. I thought it was a really great place to start, and even now, 25 years later, I look back and thought that was pretty good to start at a big company. The pay tends to be better, at that very beginning stage of your career. You could get a better paying job probably at a bigger company. There's more training, there's more kind of those established systems and processes in place, and so you can kind of learn how it's done at a larger organization, and then maybe later apply that to a smaller. Over time, I started to feel at a big company like I was kind of restricted in my job. So the larger organizations tend to have very, a really good structure and very well organized, but sometimes the con of that is that you can't go outside your role as much, and you'll be stepping on toes and all that, and politics and other things come into play, So my next position, I moved to kind of a medium-sized company, and that was really nice, where I got to have kind of a bigger role and more responsibility than I probably could have had at the big company.
So your first job at Pacific Care was marketing specialist in the senior services. Was it department?
Department.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then did you have other jobs within that company? How long did you stay at Pacific Care?
Gosh, I stayed at Pacific Care about 3 years, and it was really great, where they have, it's a bigger company, so there's lots of different departments and things going on, and so I heard about an opportunity in product development. Pacific Care was starting up. I had a startup project with developing a Medi-Cal, so that's Medicaid low-income health insurance in California. So that was a neat project to work on, and I got the experience of being part of a small team in a big company, trying to start up a new product. So that was really
so
good.
that gives you the best of both worlds a little bit. It makes it a little bit less like a big company if you have a small entrepreneurial team in a small company. Do you feel like you were able to be a little bit more creative, and did you have a little bit more room to step out of the box doing that?
Yeah, yes, definitely, yeah. So we were all learning together a lot of the time, so that was really good, especially when you're the junior person on the team. It's nice to be in an environment where kind of no one knows yet, and we're figuring it out, so that was really
fun.
Good. Yeah,
it sounds like it was fun. Anything in particular that you did in that job that was maybe different from what you did in other jobs that you can think of?
In that job, Well, I guess that was my first experience working with regulators. So, and that came to play into play later for a future job. So that was a beneficial thing that I, at the time, didn't think much of and thought it was kind of a pain having to deal with this, you know, all the application process and some of the hoops we had to jump through. But it was a great learning that I later applied later in working in regulations and compliance and in assisted living in a later job.
Okay, and the regulations, did that mainly come from the fact that this was part of a government program?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so anytime you're working with a government program or anything regulated by the government, you're going to be dealing with compliance and rules and procedures, and which may not be fun, but it's good to have that expertise is what I'm hearing. Mm-hmm. So then what came next? What came next after Pacific Care?
Well, I actually moved around a little bit more within Pacific Care. Okay. I worked on the startup of the PPO product.
Okay.
And so that's another health insurance product. Mm-hmm. And I also worked on the expansion of Secure Horizons, the Medicare risk HMO, into Florida.
Okay.
So that was really fun, where I got to fly out to Florida every once in a while, and just, you know, really I had never been to Florida before, and it was really kind of fun to be in Miami and kind of seeing what that's like, and also seeing what a whole different market that was, so very different than Southern California.
So then, did you have other positions at Pacific Care before you moved down, or what came after that one?
So that was it. And
so So during that 3 years, you moved around quite a bit.
Yeah, kind of more project based, you know, and
moved from one project team to another. You started in a role in a department, then you were able to get a job on it. Now, did you initiate some of this moving around, or did you find out about these projects and get recruited into them, or kind of how does that work?
Both ways, really. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it was where I knew someone and was friends with them that was they were working on the project, and I would hear about the position. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so it would just kind of in the course of working, and I was just, I love learning new things, so I would hear about a new project and try to find out how can I get involved with that.
So that's something interesting that I actually want to take a moment to clarify and talk about again, because a lot of people that are watching these videos, they're trying to think about what to do next with their career. And here's another thing that I'm noticing about your approach that I don't necessarily notice in all the clients I work with. I think some of the people that I work with, they'll get a job and then they'll kind of heads down do, especially quieter, right? Especially quieter, more research-oriented clients. And Stephanie's a great example of a quieter, more research-oriented person. But they'll tend to heads down, do the job, you know, be a good worker, and not really think outside of their job. Whereas it sounds like you kind of always had your antenna out. You were always networking or making friends, at least in different parts of the company. And then when something interests you and you thought, wow, that would be interesting to learn, you actually took the initiative to start asking questions about it. Someone who's afraid to do that might be worried that it would burn their bridge in their current department, perhaps. Can you say anything about that? Can you give anyone any advice to our listeners about that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in that early stage of my career, I had the advantage of, well, I'm new working, and it's early on, so I think it's a little, in a way, a little more expected that you're kind of learning and growing and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I guess because it was project related, it wasn't more so that the project would be kind of like with Medi-Cal that got killed, you know. So I kind of had to move on to something else.
Okay.
And so that was kind of the benefit of being more kind of in these project type jobs. But
so it's more appropriate in a company to move around a lot if you're moving different projects, but if you're in a department, it's a little bit more difficult to do that.
A little more, but a big learning I had is when I was too heads down in a particular job and very kind of maybe overly loyal to a boss, and not having an open mind about other departments. And I was approached by a director in another department, and I declined to interview for that job. And later I kind of regretted that I didn't do that, you know.
Okay, so always keeping her antenna out, thinking about the things that she was interested in learning. So this isn't something that you just do in high school or college, but no matter where you are in your career. And we're also, in our audience, are people who, you know, have already worked for several years and they're finding that they don't like their career and maybe wanting to transition. So thinking about that, you know, change is something that happens a lot. So should we move on from Pacific here then, at this point, to your next position?
Sure, let me think of where. Okay, so from there, I moved to ARV assisted living. So it was a great timing-wise where assisted living was really growing.
Okay.
And so that worked out well for me because I joined this company. I wanted more of an opportunity for more advancement and a kind of a bigger role than I had so far. I was mainly kind of in the project manager role at Pacific Care, which is a good role and a really good skill that transfers across many jobs. But this allowed me, I hired in as Director of Licensing was the title. So that experience I had with Secure Horizons in Florida and Medi-Cal in California, I was able to get this new and very different job based on my experience working in, you know, regulatory compliance type, you know, some of my role in my work came into play. So that was
okay,
good.
Great. So then this was probably a very different job and probably a very different type of organization, I would imagine, than when you had come from.
Yeah, so much smaller. More of a kind of a family-run, family-feel type organization. Though I mean, they grew to pretty large. I think at our height it was about 120 employees or so, and 111 assisted living communities throughout the nation. So they were in this rapid growth mode, and but really kind of innovative and seeing the trend in assisted living and getting into it in the beginning. Before other companies had.
Okay, so an assisted living company, I would imagine, just not being in the industry, it runs different assisted living facilities, or is it different than that?
Yes, so different assisted living, retirement communities, but assisted living is a little bit higher level of care where the people need assistance with activities of daily living.
Okay.
So bathing, dressing, taking their medications, those kind of things.
So could it be an apartment complex or a condominium complex, or is it actually more like a home center?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it can't be just a retirement complex because with fire regulations and things like that, people who need care at that level probably couldn't get out safely from the building. So that was a huge thing where that we would build the buildings so they would be safe from a fire code perspective, and we would have to get licensed by the state. Usually there's assisted living licensure in every state. There's small board and care homes, which are just like a 6-bed max, 6 people maximum, but assisted living tends to be in these larger buildings of about 50 to maybe 100 or so residents who live there. Okay,
so 50 to 100 senior residents live in these facilities that you build, your company builds. And then what was your job? You said you were Director of Licensing, right?
Yes, yeah.
So what was your job? To get the facilities licensed?
Yes, so my job was any new community that we acquired or built, I would have to make sure and get it licensed on time and, you know, with as little problems as possible. And then all of our existing communities, every year they would have a licensing inspection. And so my job was to help the executive director, the manager of the community, prepare for that inspection, and then they would follow up with me and fax me over the report after the inspection, and we would go over any deficiencies they would, so any sort of bad marks they would receive that we would have to correct, and it was my job to follow up with the regulatory body in the state, you know, and tell them how we were going to make the corrections and that kind of thing.
Was it fun?
Yeah, I think earlier you were saying, something about the, regulatory compliance being kind of a bummer, or, and that's what most people think, and for some reason, I like it. And it just really, I tend to be kind of analytical and detail-oriented, and so I was fine with kind of the mundane aspect of it, but also it was a lot of variety, so each state is a little different, and forget how many states we were in, like 7 states.
Okay.
And so I would have to kind of figure that out, and I was kind of a department of one, so I could kind of do my own thing. And
you were at Pacific Care for about 3 years, and then you had this job at the assisted living facility where you were director of licensing for about 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, about almost 4 years there. Yeah.
Okay, about 4 years there. And then what were some of the other jobs that you had?
Yeah, other jobs I had, I worked in home care. So I was general manager of a home care agency that was affiliated with a hospital system. So I learned about hospital systems and the home care field. Also, I worked, I at one point went back to Pacific Care. It later got acquired by United Healthcare, and I did some work there, more in their, like a care management program for skilled nursing facilities. And let's see, I also, my kind of the big job of my career was corporate gerontologist at the Hartford. So I did that for almost 6 years, and really enjoyed that. I was the thought leader, the spokesperson on retirement, which was a great opportunity, and I got a lot of experience in public relations and media campaigns and public speaking and all that kind of thing, and really kind of how you can apply a research or an academic type background in a corporate setting. So we did qualitative and quantitative research, and then we would apply that to what financial advisors and their clients need to know about retirement.
Okay, and that almost sounds like you light up the most when you talk about that, even in the very beginning, in the marketing specialist position where you were, kind of educating the salespeople, which is a very typical business-like job, on, okay, how do you apply this to your market, which is older people or seniors. And then now at the Hartford, kind of, it sounds like one of your most exciting jobs was really being able to be the gerontologist or the consultant. Again, people taking business functions, but then you just helping them put that spin on it so that they can more effectively service their clientele.
True. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Well put. Yeah.
Good. Okay. So you've had a lot of different jobs. You've taken, it sounds like they've been doing slightly different things. Is there anything that you could share with us that maybe some comparison and contrast? So we talked a little bit about, working at a big company. I know some of the companies that you worked for were smaller. Was there a difference that, or any lessons that maybe you got from that?
Yeah, I think, each, a big versus a small company, each environment has something different to bring, and different pros and cons. And I would recommend people try wherever you're at to kind of go with and try to take advantages of the pros of that environment. So for a small company, it's really nice that you can really expand your role and be involved in a lot of different things that are going on. Oftentimes there's a little bit more creativity allowed, and so you can be more creative. In a large company, they have great systems in place and organization and things like that sometimes I miss when I'm in a small kind of crazy environment of a smaller company. So definitely there's ways to take advantage of that and really learn how does a big organization like this function, and what have they learned, and what are they doing well, and that kind of thing.
And I've noticed a kind of a theme that comes up as I've been talking to you is your love of learning.
Oh, yeah.
So you know, even this approach with, I've had some jobs in big companies and I've had some jobs in small companies, and in both those environments, I've been really interested in learning, you know, what works here and what works here. And so in a small company, I can take advantage of getting involved in more areas of the company and being more creative with my job and taking more ownership. In a big company, what I can do is learn more, taking advantage of some of the big structures and processes that they maybe have implemented, where small companies might not have that. So I like that theme of learning. Let's talk a little bit about fulfillment. So a lot of people that come to me looking to change their career, they know they're not happy where they are, but they're trying to figure out how to be happy or how to feel fulfilled in their work. And, you know, as you look back, and I know you're not done with your career yet, but as you look back on the various different jobs that you've had, where have you gotten your fulfillment?
Gosh, and one thought I wanted to touch on too, when you talk about where have you gotten a fulfillment or looking for that, it's also just recently, just last night, I went to a reunion of the assisted living company that I worked at 18 years ago. And so a lot of these people I haven't seen for 18 years. And I remember there was one woman, and she was young, her first job at the company, she was the company receptionist. And I remember she was always like so positive, and she really go for it attitude, and just really hard worker, and just really kind of doing more than you would expect of the receptionist, you know. And that was kind of neat that, again, at a smaller organization, that was kind of allowed, so she would take on, you know, kind of bigger assignments and that kind of thing. I saw her last night, and she's now at Apple, and she handles Apple's on a global scale, designing environments for their customers and for their employees.
Wow.
At Apple, like a huge job. And so it was really inspiring to hear that and to see that, you know, rather than maybe being depressed about, gosh, you know, this receptionist job is such a bummer, and you know, you're learning some things that later can really apply. And I have to keep that in mind, because sometimes I get really, you know, a little frustrated with my, you know, everyone does with your current job, and but you never know. And as long as you keep working hard and learning, where your career will kind of take you along the way. So even, you know, in a job where you think this is not quite what I want to do, there's ways maybe to find fulfillment and make the best of it in an ideal world if we can. You know.
Yeah, I really like that. I mean, one of the things that you mentioned about the receptionist that you just told us the story about is, again, you talked about her character. You talked about how she was positive, how she was a go-getter, how she didn't
and a perfectionist, I guess, which she says at Apple really helps.
Okay, good to know. So she, you know, she had this way of working that was really valuable. You know, she put her personality into it. She really worked hard. She looked for other projects, and that obviously got noticed, and it moved her places. And through your career, one of the things that I've noticed that you've done always, again, is kept your antenna out, thought about how you can learn. How does this one thing over here relate to this other thing? So, you know, how does learning about regulations here, it might not be very fun, but I'm going to learn it anyway because it might serve me, and then it ends up serving you in this great second job that you had. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I think the most important thing that young people or anyone changing careers can get out of watching an interview like this is just that there are a lot of different ways to take what you're interested in and translate them into something fulfilling and meaningful. So really appreciate your time today.